Okay. My name is Michael Massioni. I'm writer and conference producer for the Metaverse Spectrum Conference. And this particular session focuses on the current state and prospects for the industrial metaverse, which is considered by many to be possibly a major driver of the metaverse market, or at least the business metaverse market. So we've gathered together a group of panelists with very diverse backgrounds and perspectives on the industrial metaverse, and I'd like to introduce them now. We have Michael Inouye, the principal analyst from ABI Research, Dave Copps, CEO of Worlds.io, Neil Trivette, VP of Developer Ecosystems for NVIDIA, and Mike Giresi, Chief Digital Officer for Molex. So let's get started with sort of the basics for the industrial metaverse market. Could we just start by trying to sort of single out the main attributes, the main advantages of the industrial metaverse? So I'll just toss that out to everyone.
Sure.
I can.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Dave, go ahead.
Yes, I think we see the industrial metaverse as a convergence of the physical and digital worlds in a persistent online environment. So thinking of it kind of like an embodied internet that you're inside of rather than just looking at it. I think there's never been a way for corporations or companies to measure the real world the way we measure things in the back office. And I think the industrial metaverse brings us away of a live digital model. We have this ability to now measure the real world in ways that were never possible before. And once you can measure things, now you can change things. You can work to become more productive, more efficient, safer. All those things become possible.
Any other input on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, the metaverse is really combining the immersiveness of spatial computing with the connectivity of the web. And there are all kinds of ways that you can apply that for greater enterprise and business efficiency and innovation, that you can have diverse teams collaborating more effectively. You can start bringing in AI in all kinds of different ways, data visualization, AR and VR. We're seeing a lot of innovation in the key use cases in the enterprise context. But like Dave was saying, I think one of the key things is digital twins, where you suddenly are able to measure the real world and visualize those measurements. Actually, you can use visualization in the design, in the monitoring, and in the prediction of real world plants and processes. So it's going to be a revolution, I think, in many ways.
I think Dave and Neil, the way you position that is very relevant to what we're seeing, particularly in the context of product development and bringing disparate teams together and helping them work faster. I think this concept of data enablement and activation is super important in terms of speed and time to market, and being able to work off of the understanding of what the information actually represents from an overall execution perspective. One of the challenges, and I'm sure you've seen this, Neil, in your role, it's difficult to get everybody on the same page sometimes in terms of what actually is trying to be achieved, particularly with technical products. And the more you can immerse someone into an environment where it's both real time, but it's actionable, and that information kind of lives on throughout the rest of the value chain, it's meaningfully from a productivity perspective. So that's where a lot of our focus is really how do we just help our customers get to value faster, and our engineers to self-actualize in ways where they feel like they're actually engineering and not necessarily chasing down data versions of data validity and things of that nature, which are very important but don't really have a ton of value sometimes.
So converting data into knowledge and insight is a key thing.
Sure.
Yeah, and I would just say I agree with everyone. From my perspective, I guess a little different in terms of it depends on some people's perspectives and I guess where they're coming from, what they consider the metaverse. So some companies may come in if they're kind of early on in that journey, they may just view XR or AR, VR as being kind of metaverse centric, potentially something like 3D scanning. And then as they kind of progress through those steps, then they start to bring a lot more of that data, so the digital twins and those kind of things. And so there's some kind of a progression sometimes in terms of what people view as metaverse. I think some of it's because some people kind of view metaverse has to be something new. And so if they're already doing digital twins or something with the data, then they kind of view that as right now as separate. And then maybe metaverse is more to them AR, VR right now. But long term, I agree with everything. I think that's all for sure part of the metaverse.
Like, that's a really good point. I think the change management aspect of that is huge, right? It's not just about throwing the technology out there. It's helping people. How do you work differently, and how do you apply that towards, a productive outcome? And I think sometimes we tend to get very excited about the technology being very cool and unique, but not necessarily understanding the physical implication of adopting and applying that. And I do think you're absolutely right. It's kind of like the definition of digital transformation. It means everything to everyone, but nothing. So how do you pull that through the organization effectively? And that's something we're definitely seeing for sure.
Yeah, and I really agree with Michael's point. I think you see it a lot that it's very common to see the term the metaverse over associated with particular technologies. XR is definitely one of them, but it is much broader than that. And even worse, of course, because the metaverse is kind of a maligned term, let's be honest, because it's over-associated in many quarters with NFTs and crypto as well, which is going to, decentralized ledgers are going to be absolutely vital to the metaverse. But there's been some negative press that has kind of rubbed off onto the metaverse. But I think it's actually very interesting. If you say industrial metaverse, people go, oh, yeah, that's real. Oh, metaverse. You go to metaverse, you go, oh. So I think the metaverse term is going to be rehabilitated through its serious use in industry and enterprise. I think this is going to be the beachhead where it really counts.
That's exactly what I think is happening. I think Meta came out and kind of, in my opinion, kind of screwed it up. I think they, but the way they metaverse, industrial metaverse is just not it confused the market. I think that very clearly the differences are real. So the metaverse is more about shared virtual environments, whereas the industrial metaverse is where we create live digital twins of real world places, and so we view that a little bit differently from most. For us, the digital twin is actually the entire environment. Some people say the digital twin is just of a thing, whether it's a jet engine or a building or something like that. We actually create digital twins as the entire environment. Everything comes alive inside of that live digital twin.
Okay, I'd like to follow up with that discussion on a number of different issues. And you mentioned digital twins, or a number of you mentioned digital twin applications. And I mean, that seems to be kind of the main part of the industrial metaverse, application market. How do you think that will change, let's say, in the near future, or expand in scope?
I mean, I think what Dave just said is super relevant in terms of digital twin moving from kind of a modeling capability to being an actual ecosystem, that you're incorporating and integrating processes beyond maybe a product development. So Dave, you used the analogy of a jet engine. So you kind of have the ability to build a jet engine, right? And you can see it and it becomes an asset. Well, the asset is truly the ability to commercialize and bring that to the marketplace and have the marketplace actually adopt and utilize that. So how do you expand that capability so that other functions, other activities, I think, are able to move at the same speed of which maybe the physical modeling or the development of the asset is? And that's something that we've been super focused on at Molex. We are not necessarily known for our speed to market, and we're trying to get better at it. A lot of it's just the cross-functional interaction between the various teams that have to do things to bring that to market. Well, our definition, our vision of Metaverse, Michael, is let's create an ecosystem that allows all the key contributors to be part of that simultaneously. And then we can reduce the number of what I would call handoffs and or transactions, if you will, that get something to some meaningful presentation faster so that we can ultimately help commercialize and move forward in a more expeditious manner. I don't know if that makes sense to the rest of the panel, but that's kind of what how we see it.
Yeah, I'll pile on. I completely agree. I think the real superpower of a real industrial metaverse is capturing and converting the physical processes that are driving, like in the case of a large industrial company, like daily operations, into a live data stream. So because we have the environment as a live digital twin, we can now measure not just what's being sensed and where it's being sensed, when and when, but also where it's being sensed. So creating that real measurement of the real world, and then using those measurements to create automations or alerts back in the real world, and doing that all in real time is, I think, to me, that's the future. That's what the industrial metaverse should look like, right? It gives us the ability to measure our real world environments in ways that just weren't possible before. And that's what's exciting to me, I think.
Yeah, I think the digital twins, I mean, I think we're naturally kind of focusing on that. I think it is a really insightful and useful kind of anchor point to say, okay, what's industrial metaverse? Because it is such a powerful concept to be able to plan and monitor and forecast, using real data. The question, how is it going to evolve over the next few years? I think it's that basic cycle. Using the real-time data, it's going to become more metaversey. And what do I mean by that? So it's more spatial computing, more connectivity, more visualization is going to come into each of those three stages. So if you're doing the design, you're going to be able to use 3D, immersive computing, 3D graphics to visualize your designs, virtually before you build them physically. And one of the people ask me, what's the best metaverse application you've ever seen? And I have, it's people in designing programs for industrial robots in the virtual space and just lifting them out and putting it onto real robots, and it all just works perfectly. That's freaky to me. That's already working. And then when you actually have the plant or the process up and working, monitoring and optimizing, and I think we'll get on to, this is where augmented and virtual reality can come in, and visualizing it, or even going onto the shop floor with AR and tweaking it with your AI companion looking over your shoulder. Now that's very metaversey, and that's beginning to happen now. There's been some very recent announcements. And then the whole thing of physical simulation, GPU compute, and AI coming in, because if you can begin to simulate your processes faster than real time, you can begin to predict and optimize into the future, and you can visualize that again. To Mike's point, it's not just random data; it's visualized insight that you're getting from these monitoring and predictive processes.
Yeah, I think I agree with everyone. And it's nice to Dave, Mike, and Neil have kind of a long-term good view of what the metaverse and industrial metaverse in particular, what it means. You talk to a lot of companies, again, early on, I've spoken to companies who, see digital twins, they don't even think that as part of the metaverse at all. They have more of a, I guess, kind of a ground, kind of fundamental kind of view with, digital twins are using it for. But as you start to bring digital twins together, digital twin to digital twins, you start to bring in a visualization that starts to add the value, and they understand it, and then they start to evangelize it. And that's where you kind of get to that next steps. Even visualization, I've spoken to a lot of companies, and they're like, they're doing digital twins. They don't see any value in visualization yet. I can't sell it. But then you talk to companies who are further out, and like, oh yeah, visualization is just very important to us now. They're using it for things like you said, design, updating factory lines, those kind of things. Then they're using it in VR, and all this starts to make more sense. And if you get to something like a command center or something like that, and a more advanced digital twin setup, then again, that visualization becomes more important to them. So, as you get more advanced again in your metaverse journey, I guess you can call it that, all those things start to become a lot more valuable. So everything we've been talking about, everyone's talking about, 100% agree, for sure.
I think part of that, Michael, is the companies like kind of their digital maturity beyond the concept of like technology. It's like the ways of working, and how do you think through how you drive more value through your specific role. And Neil, I think you said it really well. It's the ability to simulate what could be versus what we know as is, without having to spend a lot of time and money and actual resource against that, but then being able to apply it in actual production, because the simulation is representative of what you do have versus what you don't. So you can, and then project forward. We think about kind of the number of assets we have from a manufacturing process. And as we develop new products, where is really the best place to manufacture that product? Because not all plants are created the same, right? And you could even have like plants that necessarily have a certain capability that's more advantageous to a certain product. But you can't see that real time without doing a tremendous amount of data analysis and kind of historical review. And I think the faster you can provide that visualization, thank you, I can say that really well, in terms of how to pull that forward, it becomes more of an asset to the organization. And it's less about industrial metaversing, if you will. It's really about just new ways of working. And this is kind of how we want to move forward. I think this will become very real when people stop talking about it as some sort of like technology activity. And it's just, this is just our operating model. And this is how we think about driving value to the marketplace.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what, to everyone's point is, as soon as you see really effective visualization in action, you try to take it away from people. They go, don't take it away. How am I going to survive without that? It just becomes essential.
So I know, some of you have already addressed this issue, but I was just wondering if you could kind of identify, single out or rate sort of the most promising vertical markets for the industrial metaverse, whether it's energy or autos or manufacturing or a combination. Just from your experience, what do you perceive the most promising vertical markets to be for the industrial metaverse?
Well, certainly from the NVIDIA, I think most of the early adopters are probably in the manufacturing space, complex plants doing complex processes, is kind of a beachhead application. There's so much planning and detailed data. Again, to Mike's point, if you just faced with this huge intractable problem that suddenly you can visualize and plan and simulate, it is just so enabling. I think that is where we're seeing the majority of the early adoption.
We're kind of seeing it with large industrial companies. So think about the companies that have the most complex real world environments. So especially in supply chain, and I think also environments where people are harder and harder to find. I think the stat I heard the other day in supply chain was that they have 15.5 million more jobs than there are people to fill them. So automation is not just a good idea anymore. It's like a mandate. And so for us, the best customers are the large industrial companies that are trying to understand, analyze, and build automation into their very complex environments. So by building a live digital twin of a real world environment and being able to measure the activities and processes that are happening, it gives them the ability to superpowers they haven't had before. So companies like steel companies, that's been our big thing lately. Those are really dangerous environments, and so if you can provide technology that can create a safer work environment for people, that's a huge benefit. So yeah, that and energy and manufacturing, distribution, all those places are just really thirsty for using the industrial metaverse to measure and improve their environments.
Yeah, I think, sorry, Dave, we're seeing the same thing, in terms of adoption through large industrial manufacturing. And like anything else, there's companies that are kind of out in the forefront and they're leading, and there's others that are slower to adopt. We find that the ones that are faster to want to venture into this space it's not, it wouldn't be surprising to hear that they are, based on how they go to market and how they represent their businesses and how they think about driving value. So we think from a Molex perspective specifically, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here. Everything from what it means from connectivity and speed and capability in terms of providing the compute. And Neil, obviously, we partner with your company on some of this in terms of helping high-speed backplane capability out to the internet, for lack of a better description. But certainly, Dave, within the physical plant, there's automobile companies that are like super excited about this, and there's some who know about it but aren't quite sure, how do I get this going? Like, how do I get started? And I think that is representative of kind of who they are. For a better word.
You see that for sure. There's definitely a lot of fear, I think, and the fear is in not knowing, right? right? I think once they see it, it seems almost magical. You know,
I know.
there's a lot of fear initially.
I agree.
Yeah, the only thing I would
So-
add, I guess. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go
No, I
ahead.
was saying the only thing I would add would be look outside digital twins in the XR side. We've seen lots of traction and interest on the AEC and built environment for more kind of immersive, where they're showing plans to customers, and clients, and those kind of things. So they've kind of adopted it early on in some of those more immersive collaboration and engagements.
No, Michael, that's
As
a
well.
really good point. We because of the pandemic, we were and
Right.
where our plants are, it makes it pretty difficult. It was very difficult to actually physically go to those plants. So as we were evolving those capabilities, particularly with concepts of XR and being able to help guide and understand the implications of some of the things that we were trying to do. I mean, we were implementing a brand new PLM system during the pandemic. We couldn't physically get to those sites, so we had to do it through digital means and so forth. And I don't think people thought about it as working in a metaverse. I mean, they just thought about it as, well, this is
You have to do it, yeah.
I just need visibility. But educating people on this is kind of what we're talking about. Like this is a new way of working, and it was really helpful because it created an example that was very tangible and people could connect to it and they understood it. And it wasn't something that was like digitally theoretical. It was like, no, this is actually what we're talking about. It's this immersive environment. So I do agree with you. Everything from audits through training to optimization of plant infrastructure and things associated with that. We learned a whole lot about how we could work differently, through these capabilities because we had to. It wasn't an option.
I'm really excited to see AR in industrial metaverse because I think we haven't seen really good examples of it yet. At least we haven't. But I love the idea of kind of collapsing AR, digital twins, AI, to where someone's wearing AR glasses. Now information has location, right? So when you look at a shipping board, you know what it is, if it's locked or not, things like that. Just I love that thought. That's one of the areas we really want to go, but I can't wait for AR to kind of fold into the industrial metaverse.
Yeah, I think AI is, if you look at the metaverse, and what are the ingredients of the metaverse, right? There's AI, there's XR, there's the whole 3D GPU stuff. There's going to be some Web3 stuff, and it's all the networking, 5G, and next decade 6G. But it's AI, I think, that it really is kind of the glue that glues it all together. And I agree with you, Dave. I think, because there have been AR devices out there for a number of years now, and they're getting better and better. But the fact that you can combine AI and AR together, that's when the magic happens, because it's no longer just, oh, this is cool. I wonder what I can do with it. To, the AI can scan your environment, understand what you're trying to do, and either remote expert or guided task with the AI, co-pilot, to use Microsoft's term, to actually guide you in location. That's a groundbreaking thing. AI is making what appeared to be magical just a few months ago. It's beginning to make it feasible, and I think that's a real revolution. And it's, as we all know, it's all happening kind of faster than anyone expected. So it is going to be really interesting to watch that evolve.
Yeah, it's interesting because that was my next question. So you've answered my next question about the role of XR, AI, and even IoT in the development of the industrial metaverse. So I just wanted to kind of get back to sort of the structure of the market. I mean, obviously this is a market that depends on the integration of a lot of different elements. And I'm just wondering, especially since we have two panelists that are developers of platforms for the industrial metaverse, I mean, what stage are we at? Is this like an embryonic period? How quickly do you feel the ecosystem will evolve, let's say, in the next 3 to 5 years?
I'll start. We're actually delivering it today. So we actually we'll capture the world in 2D with cameras and sensors, and typically we don't put any hardware inside. People already have cameras and sensors. I think that's one of the great things about this idea of the industrial metaverse is that customers we're working with have spent tens to hundreds of millions of dollars on IoT devices and sensors and cameras, but really kind of in the end, all they got back was more data. The idea of using industrial metaverse technology is like creating live digital twins of real world environments, is giving them the ability now to measure the real world, just like we used to measure stuff in the back office with AI. So couldn't agree more about how AI is the glue, right? So it's this, but we're delivering it today. And so we deliver that solution today. Some of the use cases are things like, well, there's safety use cases. So making sure that people aren't in the wrong place at the wrong time. One thing that's really interesting about the industrial metaverse or live digital twin is that you can create these kind of smart zones, if you will. So inside the twin, you can actually create a zone that's programmable, so now I can program that zone to say, let me know if there's a person here. And maybe if there's in the case of steel, a cauldron of hot steel going overhead, you need to make sure that no one's in that zone. So by using industrial metaverse, we can see that someone's in a place they shouldn't be and send an alarm, which could be, buzzing their phone and saying, get out of there, or it could be an alert or a blinking light, but that all happens in real time. And it's a fascinating thing that I don't think people know is real today. Can you really measure the world in real time and then have alerts and automations happen in the real world, as they happen, almost like a real-time Six Sigma, instead of having a pad and pencil looking at something a week later, it's actually you're detecting that critical variance that's happening and you're measuring it, and then you're issuing an alert in real time. And that's just that's something I think people just don't realize is possible today.
Yeah, I would agree. We've definitely come out of R&D phase. I mean, there's a lot of innovation left to go, but we're definitely, I would say, we're in the early possibility phase. We're here. There are people using this technology today. There's a lot more to do. So it kind of comes back to the hype cycle, the metaverse hype cycle. The poor metaverse is dragged through this hype cycle. It's the industrial metaverse that's definitely powered out of the trough of disillusionment fastest and is onto the plateau of productivity. It's being deployed today, but it's going to evolve very quickly, even beyond what we have today. But it's being used today. That's the important thing.
I think what could be really interesting.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to pile on that a little bit. I love the comment. I think what the future looks like, is that the separateness of the physical world and the digital world are going to disappear. It's just going to become one thing, right? So eventually we'll all have our AR glasses or our contact or whatever in, and as we look around the world, there's information there and we can interact with that and become more effective or safer or all those things. And so I do think that's kind of the future, is that the lines we have drawn between the digital and physical world will start to just disappear, and they all become kind of this one way of seeing the world.
I do agree, but also, I mean, lightweight specs like this that are totally AI. I mean, they're a decade away. I mean, there's so many difficult problems to solve, and the consumer metaverse is kind of relying. There's a bunch of stuff that has to happen in the consumer space before metaverse really becomes a thing that people are using. But in the industrial metaverse, we have enough technology pieces that are working here and now today. We don't need to wait any longer. It's deployable today. It's going to get better though.
Yeah, Neil and Dave, I think the industrial metaverse is here. And I think, Dave, your example is a really good one. I think using AI to be more intelligent and more alerting, of potential issues, particularly around safety, we're doing that also. And I don't think people think about it as the metaverse. I think they just think about it as applying, data to warning people. You know what I mean? But it is all part of that ecosystem. I think on the consumer side, I do agree with Neil. I think it's just going to be a slower adoption. I don't know if you guys agree, but I've yet to find anyone who can wear, AR device for more than a couple hours max. I mean, it just becomes really difficult, and for a lot of different reasons. And
Yeah,
You know,
it's
you
not,
know, in the industrial side, you don't really have to have that necessarily. You know what I mean? There's ways to do it. I mean, so I just think they're two different products, two different worlds, and they will merge at some point. But I do think we're a few years away from that.
I couldn't agree more. And we're kind of handling this area between now and then with cameras and sensors.
Yeah, right.
So by connecting deeply into IoT and being able to sense the environment, we can do a lot without AR. But just like you said, it's just not at the point today where people can wear them around all day. Or there's a fanny pack or whatever. It's just that's not there yet. But once we get that situated, and AR can be very simple, and someone can put some glasses they want, and information's everywhere, you know, then
I agree.
Stakes will go down, productivity will go up. It's going to be a fantastic thing. But I think, yeah, to bridge it right now, we're just connecting deeply with cameras, and
I think that's right.
Yeah. And I think that will continue too. It'll just become richer and richer. I mean, it won't
That's
like,
right.
oh, now we don't use cameras anymore. We'll always use cameras. But picking up on the point that you know, people don't call it the metaverse. I agree. We'll know when the metaverse has truly succeeded when we don't need to mention the term anymore.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
That's like internet. You go into some, here's a nice online application. They go, are you using the internet? Immersive applications, you know, it'll all, that's what we're just, it's just a useful term for bringing all that stuff and making it reality. But eventually the term will fade into
spot on. It just needs to be a way of working. It's like it's kind of how we show up and how we get our jobs done and how we move on and how the rest of life integrates with that. That's when it will be real. Until then, it does feel like we kind of have to, almost like you're marketing it, you know, in a sense. But it is a lot of education though, Neil, because I think without it, people they don't connect these things logically. And I think by forcing that connection, it helps accelerate innovation, particularly through the folks who are doing a lot of the work, because ultimately that's where the majority of the innovation will come from in terms of everyday capability. It's not going to come from some master vision somewhere. It needs to be folks who are doing the work real time and say, hey, if I could just do this a little bit differently, or if I had that information delivered this way, it would allow me to impact these lines much more effectively. And quite honestly, I could take multiple cycles out. That's where I think the innovation around this concept will come. And with companies like Dave's and so forth, and yours, the application of that in terms of physical capability, it'll drive a ton of value, in the industry.
There is kind of an important convergence happening now too, just to your point. It used to be these organizations were operating in the cloud or on the edge, and it's either or, and now I think there's this kind of brilliant thing happening where they're becoming, it just doesn't matter. You can learn in the cloud and deploy at the edge, and it can be air gapped or not air gapped. And so there is kind of a really cool thing happening right now, and how people are kind of bringing the industrial metaverse to life. It doesn't matter if it's in the cloud or on the edge. It can be both, hybrid,
I was just going to jump in and ask all of you whether you have any examples or data on the extent to which use of the industrial metaverse has boosted productivity or cost effectiveness for clients, whether they're kind of general figures or more specific ones.
Some can't say the names, but I can give you some data. I mean, like one real example is, in distribution of cold chain items. So whether it's pharmaceuticals or things like that, a single pallet can be worth millions of dollars, and so when a pallet comes off the truck and it's full of pharmaceuticals, it has to be put in a bio box very quickly. If it doesn't, the thing spoils, right? So the ability to kind of have an AI that recognizes these special pallets as they come off and say, hey, I'm going to put a timer on it immediately, right? And then the timer is going and 10 minutes goes by and it kind of sends a note to the manager. 30 minutes goes by, maybe it starts a blinky red light, and maybe 10 minutes left, it starts to sound an alarm. But anyway, getting that pallet into the bio box, it doesn't spoil. But you think about just the math of that, right? If it's a couple $1 million and you have 20 or 30 distribution centers and it happens once a year, it's a 60, 70, $80 million problem, right? So it's there's a lot of value. Sometimes the value is exponential. It's not like you double your money. No, it's like 10, 20, 30, 40x, And other things is safety, like again, in these very dangerous environments, having one accident is, first of all, a human crisis, right? I mean, this shouldn't happen. And then also just the business side of that's very expensive as well. And so it's sometimes you can't measure the value of just being able to measure real world environments and affect them as they're happening. That's the key, right? It's not about 10 minutes later or 20 minutes or a week later. It's like, can I affect this environment right now as it's happening? And that's what I think where the real value is.
Great. So my final question is, because I think we're getting close to the time limit, is what do you expect the growth of the industrial metaverse to be over the next 3 to 5 years?
I mean, we think it's going to be exponential, both in terms of what we're hearing from our customers and what we're seeing within our own organization. The folks that we're helping support in the industry are expanding these capabilities, significantly at a very accelerated pace. And I think architecture is going to allow faster acceleration, particularly as we think about partnerships between some of the companies that provide these platforms, so that other companies can consume them without having to create the capabilities. So I think it's going to be very significant, but I do think it's going to be mostly in industrial. I just don't think the consumer side is going to be anywhere near as a quick pickup as the industrial piece is. At least that's our point of view on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
No, I would say I would agree. In my conversations, it's just quite in terms of expectations, it can vary quite a bit, which typically from my experience kind of talking to companies, like it's a pretty good sign. You have companies who think, oh, it's going to grow really fast, and some who think it's going to be lots more organic kind of growth. That just means that there for sure is that opportunity and the potential there. It could also depend how, I guess, widely you define metaverse or the industrial metaverse. How much of that is virtualization, automation, and those kind of things. But for sure, it's going to be growing. Even the companies who've deployed it, there's a question of like return investment and stuff like that. And most companies we've spoken to, they may have like a target threshold of 15-20% or more, but with the payback period of 1 to 2 years, but they've all clear it pretty easily with those things. So as Dave said, sometimes it's multiples of benefit or value in return. So it just again depends on what that, because some companies may say that they have the returns, but strategically, if it's not quite part of their core strategy right now, they may not kind of push that. So there's some cases where it may be a little bit slower than we think, but for sure it's going to grow. And another growth for like AI was cited a lot. AI has kind of been viewed not only for what we've been talking about, but also for things like accessibility. So you can think of like simulations. It may be like an engineering analyst who kind of do the simulations today, but if that becomes more accessible to more engineers, then more people may be doing CAD simulations that are doing it today, and that can just expand the opportunity as well. But yeah, so it's going to definitely grow. And I agree with Mike in terms of consumer. We've been forecasting the industrial to be stronger in terms of growth and the consumer as well. I mean, we see some crazy numbers out there, but if you drill it down to what's actually truly kind of more metaverse the consumer side, it's just going to take longer in terms of where we are seeing it in the compared to the industrial as well. So.
Yeah, we're seeing it in the market. I mean, I think the most misunderstood area of business is the real world of motion. Like that's the one area that we just don't know much about. And so the need for this is incredible. I would say that when we walk into a client, again, we're kind of focused on large industrial clients, but when we walk into these clients for our first demo, it's a problem they're all trying to solve. Like we're not going into any of these environments and they're kind of saying, oh, I haven't thought about that before. They're all trying to solve this problem. Everybody's trying to figure out how to build more automation into their real world processes. Like everyone's working on that right now. We've not met one company that we speak to where we're bringing them a new idea. How we do it's really different, but I think it's not even a question of how fast it will grow. How fast it will grow will depend less on technology and more on change management. I think we are seeing these large companies. They do kind of look at this like a cow at a new gate, as we say in Texas. You walk up. Whoa, what is this industrial metaverse thing? So I think there's some change management that slows it down a little bit, but the need is absolutely there right now, and everyone's concerned about it and everybody's working on it. So I think it's happening for sure. It'll grow like crazy.
Yeah, I think the industrial metaverse will grow. I mean, just follow the money. right? There's a straight line from this deployment of this kind of technology to increased efficiency, better profits. So the commercial motivation is there. And I think and not to over stress the AI thing, but the AI is going to unlock this, that we've had a lot of latent potential, like AR, the earlier example that we were using in visualization, understanding the environment, that cameras, and actually using visual processing and actually understanding, what's going on. All these magical things are going to be unlocked. That's going to be the kind of the innovative engine that is going to provide growth, I think, in the industrial metaverse space, both in breadth, different types of use cases, and depth, as people find new ways to deploy these technologies. Not to discount the consumer metaverse too, but it has a very different path to tread. That there is not quite such a straight, short line from innovation to money. Everyone's busy solving some of the interoperability problems, but as soon as we solve, like, how do you send your avatar from place to place, the bits and bytes of it, we're getting closer to solving that. But as soon as we solve that, we're going to find, well, what's the business model? So there's a whole cycle of business model innovation that needs to happen. I think that's actually going to be the long haul in the consumer space, where it's much simpler in the industrial space.
Right. Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. Actually, you also answered one of the other questions I had in terms of what the biggest challenges are for the industrial metaverse market, and you have certainly addressed that. So I'm going to wrap this up, since we're probably at the 45-minute time limit, and I just wanted to thank everybody for their great thoughts and perspectives. And this is an important topic. We tried to cover some other applications, automotive applications, and energy to a lesser extent. So obviously those relate to the industrial metaverse as well. So as I said, I just want to thank you for your participation, and that just wraps it up.
Great.
But
Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone. It's great.